Public education, it's the bedrock of American society, a promise whispered to every generation, the hope of opportunity, a ladder to climb higher. We believe that knowledge is power, and that power should be accessible to all, regardless of background or circumstance. Our public education system, vast and complex, is a tapestry woven from local control, state mandates, and federal oversight. At the heart of this intricate web sits the Department of Education, created in 1979 to ensure quality education for every child. This debate is not just about budgets and bureaucracy. It's about our values and the kind of nation we want to be. The Constitution is curiously silent on the issue of education, leaving the responsibility largely to individual states. This has resulted in a decentralized system with remarkable local control, but also stark variations in quality and opportunity. Should we strive for a more standardized national approach? Or does true progress lie in empowering local communities to chart their own educational destinies? And what about the role of the federal government? Is it a necessary force for equity and accountability, or an overbearing presence stifling innovation? As we delve into the constitutional foundations of education in America, we encounter a curious silence. The Founding Fathers did not explicitly enshrine a right to education in the Constitution. This omission was a deliberate choice, reflecting the prevailing beliefs and anxieties of their time. The framers were deeply wary of centralized power, having just fought a revolution to break free from a distant monarch. Instead, they opted to leave this responsibility to individual states. This decision laid the groundwork for a decentralized system of education that persists to this day. But this silence also created ambiguity, leading to ongoing debate and litigation over who is responsible for providing and regulating education. The absence of a national mandate for education doesn't mean that education is entirely absent from state constitutions. Every state constitution includes provisions for public education, but these provisions vary widely in language, specificity, and funding requirements. Some states offer broad pronouncements, while others provide detailed mandates. This patchwork has resulted in a highly decentralized system, with each state charting its own course. Localized control allows communities to tailor their schools to the unique needs and values of their students. It fosters innovation by encouraging experimentation and competition among different approaches to education. However, this decentralized approach can lead to vast disparities in funding and quality. Some students receive a world-class education, while others languish in underfunded and underperforming schools. The 10th Amendment, a shield or a sword? Those who advocate for dismantling the Department of Education often point to the 10th Amendment. This amendment reserves all powers not specifically delegated to the federal government to the states or the people. For proponents of states' rights, the 10th Amendment serves as a shield, protecting the autonomy of states from federal intrusion in matters like education. They argue that the federal government has overstepped its bounds, imposing burdensome regulations and mandates on local school districts. They envision a future where education policy is crafted closer to home, free from federal bureaucracy. Opponents counter that the federal government has a moral and legal obligation to ensure equal educational opportunities for all students. They argue that federal oversight is essential to protect the rights of marginalized students and level the playing field. Beyond the text, the search for an inherent right. The Constitution doesn't explicitly declare education a fundamental right, fueling a long-standing debate. Some legal scholars argue that the right to education is implicit, woven into the fabric of other guaranteed freedoms. They point to the First Amendment's guarantee of free speech and assembly, arguing that these freedoms are meaningless without an educated citizenry. Others highlight the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause, contending that denying equal access to education perpetuates existing inequalities. This search for an inherent right to education reflects a fundamental belief. Education is not simply a service provided by the government but a precondition for individual fulfillment and societal progress. Without it, individuals are denied the chance to reach their full potential, and democracy itself is weakened. Public education, a state-created entitlement? While the debate over an inherent right to education continues, a new legal argument has emerged. Legal scholar Michael Heise suggests that because states have made education compulsory and universal, they have created a legitimate claim of entitlement for students. This argument hinges on the concept of a property interest in education. Heise argues that the state's actions create a form of entitlement that cannot be arbitrarily denied or diminished. This argument has gained traction, suggesting a stronger legal basis for challenging educational inequalities. Heightened scrutiny. A new legal frontier. The emerging legal argument for public education as a public right has profound implications. It calls for courts to apply heightened scrutiny to cases involving education, a standard typically reserved for fundamental rights. This means that any government action that infringes upon the right to education would face a higher burden of justification. This heightened scrutiny could empower courts to strike down policies that perpetuate funding disparities and lead to greater accountability for schools. It could reshape the debate over school choice, requiring states to demonstrate that voucher programs or charter schools do not exacerbate existing inequalities. By elevating the legal status of education, advocates hope to create a more just and equitable system. A department is born. The U.S. Department of Education, born in 1979 under the Carter administration, emerged from the consolidation of various federal education programs. This move reflected a growing recognition of education's central role in national well-being. Prior to the department's creation, federal involvement in education was piecemeal, often tied to specific initiatives. The establishment of a cabinet-level department signaled a more comprehensive approach to addressing educational challenges. However, the department's birth was not without controversy. Critics argued that education was best left in the hands of states and local communities, fearing that a centralized bureaucracy would stifle innovation. A budget of billions, a mandate of equity. Today, the Department of Education oversees a vast enterprise, managing a budget of billions of dollars and administering a wide array of programs. Its mandate is to promote student achievement and preparation for global competitiveness by fostering educational excellence and ensuring equal access. A significant portion of the department's budget is distributed to states and school districts through various grant programs. The department also plays a crucial role in enforcing federal civil rights laws related to education, ensuring that all students have equal opportunities. The tug-of-war, federal oversight versus local control. The Department of Education's role has been a subject of ongoing debate, reflecting the larger tension between federal power and states' rights. Advocates for a strong federal role argue that the department is essential for addressing persistent inequalities in educational opportunity. They point to the historical legacy of discrimination and segregation that has left many students at a disadvantage. Opponents counter that the department is a bureaucratic behemoth, bogged down in red tape and out of touch with local needs. They argue that education policy is best left in the hands of states and school districts, which are closer to the students and families they serve. A question of accountability. The debate over the Department of Education often boils down to a fundamental question: who is accountable for the success of our schools? Proponents of a strong federal role argue that the department provides essential oversight and accountability, ensuring that taxpayer dollars are spent effectively. They argue that without federal oversight, there would be less transparency and accountability, potentially leading to a decline in educational quality. Critics counter that the department's focus on standardized testing and top-down accountability measures has created a culture of fear and compliance, narrowing the curriculum and stifling creativity. The global classroom, a test of performance. In an increasingly interconnected world, the performance of American students on the global stage has become a subject of intense scrutiny. International assessments like PISA and TIMSS provide a snapshot of how our students stack up against their peers in other industrialized nations. These tests measure not just rote memorization, but also students' ability to apply their knowledge and skills in real-world contexts. The results of these international assessments are often met with a mix of anxiety and hand-wringing. The United States consistently ranks below many other developed nations in key subjects like math and science, fueling concerns about the competitiveness of the American workforce. Beyond rankings, unpacking the data. While international test scores can provide valuable insights, it's crucial to delve beyond simplistic rankings and examine the data more nuancedly. Aggregating scores at the national level can obscure significant variations within countries, masking disparities based on socioeconomic status, race, and geography. When disaggregated by socioeconomic background, a stark and troubling pattern emerges in the United States. American students from affluent families tend to perform on par with, or even outperform, their counterparts in top-performing countries. However, American students from disadvantaged backgrounds lag significantly behind, widening the achievement gap and dragging down the national average. The socioeconomic divide, a tale of two Americas. The stark disparities in educational outcomes between affluent and disadvantaged students in the United States raise troubling questions about equity and opportunity. Students from low-income families often face a cascade of disadvantages, from inadequate access to healthcare and nutrition to attending under-resourced schools. These disadvantages accumulate over time, creating an uneven playing field that even the most determined students struggle to overcome. Addressing this socioeconomic divide requires a multifaceted approach, tackling not just educational inequities but also the broader social and economic factors that contribute to them. Section 4, Apples and Oranges, the challenges of comparison. While international assessments can provide a useful benchmark, it's essential to acknowledge the inherent challenges of comparing educational systems across different countries. Each nation has its own unique cultural context, educational philosophy, and set of priorities, making direct comparisons difficult. Curricula vary widely, with some countries placing greater emphasis on rote memorization, while others prioritize critical thinking and problem-solving. Teacher training, student assessment methods, and the level of parental involvement also differ significantly, influencing educational outcomes. Moreover, sampling methods and student participation rates can vary across countries, potentially skewing results. Some countries may have higher rates of students opting out of testing, or may exclude certain student populations, making it difficult to ensure a truly apples-to-apples comparison. The call to dismantle the Department of Education reverberates through certain corridors of American politics, a rallying cry for those who believe that the federal government has grown too large, too intrusive, and too far removed from the needs of everyday people. They see the department as a symbol of overreach and argue that education, like other essential services, should be controlled closer to home, by states and local communities, where the unique needs and values of each area can be better understood and addressed, not dictated by a distant bureaucracy in Washington, D.C. Proponents of dismantling the department paint a picture of a bloated bureaucracy, bogged down in red tape, stifling innovation, and creating inefficiencies that hinder progress. They argue that the current system imposes a one-size-fits-all approach that fails to account for the unique needs of diverse communities, leaving many students behind. They argue that the department's vast budget, despite good intentions, is often misspent on ineffective programs and administrative overhead, diverting funds away from classrooms and students. They envision a future where education dollars are redirected away from the federal government and returned to states, empowering local school boards, parents, and teachers to make decisions that best serve their students. This devolution of power, they believe, would not only reduce waste, but also unleash a wave of innovation, allowing for greater flexibility, experimentation, and responsiveness to the needs of individual students. By placing control back into the hands of those who are directly involved in the education process, they hope to create a more dynamic and effective educational system that can adapt to the changing demands of the future. The allure of local control in education is undeniable. It resonates deeply with the belief that those who are closest to the students, parents, teachers, and community members are best positioned to make decisions that directly impact their education. The idea that decisions should be made by those closest to the students they affect, by parents, teachers, and community members, holds intuitive appeal. It suggests a more personalized approach to education, one that can adapt to the unique needs and aspirations of each student. It promises greater accountability, responsiveness, and a curriculum tailored to the specific values and priorities of each community. This localized approach can foster a sense of ownership and pride among community members, encouraging more active participation in the educational process. Decentralization, however, is not a panacea. While it offers many potential benefits, it also comes with significant risks and challenges that cannot be ignored. Critics of dismantling the Department of Education warn that shifting power to the states could exacerbate existing inequalities and undermine efforts to ensure that all students, regardless of their zip code, have access to a quality education. They highlight the danger of creating a fragmented system where educational quality varies dramatically from one state to another. They point to the vast disparities in funding and resources that already plague American education, with some states investing significantly more per pupil than others. This uneven distribution of resources can lead to significant gaps in educational opportunities and outcomes. They argue that a weaker federal role could lead to a race to the bottom, where states, competing for jobs and investment, prioritize tax cuts over education spending, leaving schools in poorer districts even further behind. This could result in a widening gap between affluent and disadvantaged communities. Moreover, they fear that dismantling the department could weaken enforcement of federal civil rights laws, potentially reversing hard-won progress in desegregation and equal access for students with disabilities. The federal oversight has been crucial in ensuring that all students receive fair and equal treatment, regardless of their background or abilities. Defenders of the Department of Education argue that while local control is important, a strong federal role is essential to safeguard equity and ensure that all students have access to a quality education, regardless of where they live. They see the department as a vital backstop, a bulwark against the potential for discrimination, neglect, and unequal opportunity that can arise in a highly decentralized system. They point to the department's role in enforcing federal civil rights laws, ensuring that schools do not discriminate on the basis of race, ethnicity, gender, disability, or national origin. They highlight the department's efforts to protect students with disabilities, ensuring that they receive the accommodations and support they need to succeed. Moreover, they argue that the department plays a crucial role in collecting and analyzing data on school performance, identifying areas of need, and targeting resources to schools and students that need them most. Without a strong federal presence, they fear that these efforts to promote equity and accountability would be weakened, leaving vulnerable students at risk. The debate over the Department of Education, at its core, is a debate about the kind of nation we aspire to be. It's a reflection of our values, our priorities, and our vision for the future. It's about the balance between individual liberty and collective responsibility, a delicate equilibrium that defines our democratic society. Between local control and national standards, ensuring that every child, regardless of their background, has access to quality education. It's about the promise of equal opportunity and the pursuit of a more just and equitable society, where education serves as the great equalizer. As we've seen, there are no easy answers, no simple solutions. The path forward is fraught with challenges and complexities. Dismantling the Department of Education, while appealing to some as a way to reduce bureaucracy and empower local communities, carries significant risks. It could lead to unintended consequences that might be difficult to reverse. It could exacerbate existing inequalities, creating a wider gap between the haves and the have-nots. Undermine efforts to protect the rights of vulnerable students, including those with disabilities and those from marginalized communities, and lead to a patchwork system of education that leaves many children behind, struggling to catch up in an increasingly competitive world. Yet, simply maintaining the status quo is not an option either. The current system has its own set of problems that need addressing. The department, like any large institution, is not without its flaws. It can be bureaucratic, inflexible, and at times, out of touch with the needs of the communities it serves. It can stifle innovation and be slow to respond to the changing needs of students and educators. The challenge, then, is not to choose between extremes, but to find a better way forward. A path that honors our values and meets the needs of all students. Perhaps the answer lies in reimagining the role of the federal government in education, making it more of a partner than a ruler. Shifting from a top-down, one-size-fits-all approach to a more nuanced and supportive role. One that respects local autonomy while ensuring national standards. This could involve setting clear national standards and goals, benchmarks that all schools strive to meet, while providing states and local communities with greater flexibility and autonomy in how they achieve those goals. This balance could foster innovation and cater to the unique needs of different communities. It could mean investing in research and innovation, exploring new methods and technologies to enhance learning experiences, identifying and scaling up effective practices, sharing success stories and best practices across the nation, and providing targeted support to schools and students in need. By doing so, we can create a more equitable and effective education system for all.